Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared, and what you're looking at here on the screen is a literal mountain of olives in Turkey that has been cleaved in twain. Okay, this is a result of the earthquake that happened recently in Turkey that affected both Turkey and Syria. And there's a grove here on top of a hill or a mountain. I don't know what they consider over there, but you can kind of see the terrain. But it's an olive grove that's been split in two. You see where I'm going with this? I talked about this in the recent live stream, but there's probably many of you that haven't seen this, and there's new details since that time when I did the live stream. I want to talk about this, look at the scriptures, and just explore what we're looking at here. Want to look at this as well as this. If you're not aware, there was a train derailment in Ohio, and I didn't pay too much attention to it at first. A lot of you had kind of brought this up, and I was just kind of like, I don't know. I mean, but it turns out that there's some interesting details about this as well. So I'm going to first cover the train derailment, and then we'll go into this mount of olives in Turkey that has been cleaved in twain. First, let's do a little review. Let's look at the big picture. We've talked about how there's a lot of stuff going on this year. The year started out with flooding in California. Right? They were talking about a potential arc storm, which didn't happen, but there were still tons and tons and tons of damage done as a result of this continual procession of storms that hit California, right? Part of an atmospheric river that was pushing all these storms in California. All right. And then we had an earthquake in Indonesia, a 7.6, which tied for last year's largest earthquakes. There were two of them that were 7.6, and we started out this year in January with a 7.6. All right. There was a fox on the Temple Mount. You can go back and watch that video. There's potential implications to that, or if at the very least, the Jews kind of view that as a special occurrence that happened this year. It was on the 17th. Okay, and then we had the Chinese surveillance balloon drama, the first one that went all the way across the continent from Alaska to South Carolina, going over the Kansas City area, which is interesting. And the train derailment happened in the middle of this, in the middle of the Chinese balloon going over the U.S. The derailment happened on the 3rd of February, and then the next day, the balloon was shot down by the U.S. military. Okay. So you have this going on. Okay. A couple days later, we have a 7.8 earthquake. And like I said, we're going to get into the details of this. If you didn't catch the live stream, it turns out that the death toll has gone way, way up from when I first covered this, because until yesterday, I had this number at 2,300, okay, 2,300. As you can see, as of right now, and it's probably going to continue to climb, it's at 41,132, making it an incredibly deadly earthquake. And when we look at that in terms of previous earthquakes and years, okay, column D is total deaths from earthquakes in any given year that you're looking at here. And then column E is the deadliest earthquake of the year. So 41,000, if you're looking at total between all earthquakes, you have to go back all the way to 2010 to outdo this, what happened this year. And then if we're looking at single just one earthquake by itself, same thing. You have to go back to 2010. And then before that, the next deadliest after 2010 would have been 2008. So this was a significant event in terms of earthquake history and impact on human life. So it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a really, really big deal. And they're still trying to grapple with the the effects of it. These people that have been displaced from their homes, and there's a lot of aid that's needed. It's a bad time of year for this to be happening because it's cold and it's freezing over there. All right, so back here. Okay, so we had that. Okay. And at that same time, I don't have an exact date. I'm assuming it happened the day of the earthquake because I haven't seen anything that says otherwise. That's when you had this olive grove in Tepehan, Turkey, that was torn into. There was a chasm that formed that divided the olive grove. The next day, you had the temple changes. Kind of interesting. And then for the next few days in a row, starting on the 10th, you have more mystery objects that have been shot down. And I need to go into that further because I saw somewhere there was, if you watch Mr. MBB 333, he had a recording of a senator that had come out of an intelligence committee meeting, I think it was. And he essentially said that they weren't balloons. You should just go see it. Go watch Mr. MBB 333. And it's like his video from yesterday. So these, I don't know. I don't know what they are. I'm not going to aliens yet, but something weird is happening. A lot of you think that it's a distraction from what happened in Ohio with the train derailment. It could be. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I can see why you think that, but frankly, I don't know. So on the 10th, 11th, and 12th, you had objects shot down over Alaska, Yukon, Canada, and Lake Huron, Michigan, respectively, making a total of 4, I guess you could call them like aerial invasions from nations or civilizations or whatever from outside of the United States entering our airspace. And then on the 13th, excuse me, at the same time that the Super Bowl was going on, but on the other side of the Atlantic, there was a bright meteor over France in southern England. It was only the 7th ever to be detected before it entered our atmosphere, which made it part of what made it special. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on this year. It's been a very active year compared to last year. I don't recall so many things happening this early last year. The biggest thing was that big volcano near Tonga right here. It was the largest explosion ever recorded by modern instruments on the surface of Earth. Okay, but aside from that, not a whole lot. You had the Ukraine war that began in February. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary. It'll be on the 24th of February. But a lot of stuff is going on. So let's look at the train derailment. So what caught my eye and why I wanted to include that in this video and why I feel it kind of like made me think I should go ahead and put this down on the Second Coming timeline is the fact that the place that this occurred was in East Palestine, Ohio. East Palestine. They're saying that it was because of a mechanical issue with a rail car axle, and we'll look at that in just a minute. Let's go to Google Earth. All right, let's go over here to the train derailment. Okay, so this is where it happened. Okay, and it looks like it happened on the east side of East Palestine. But Palestine, we all know that that's the Roman name given to Israel, the land of Canaan, however you want to think of it. It has its origins in the name of the ancient enemies of Israel, the Philistines, which my understanding is that's why the Romans chose to call it Palestine. So, but essentially you can view this as, if you're looking at this metaphorically, silly alert. Next stop, Silly Town. For those of you that don't like to think about this kind of thing, this could be symbolically significant or metaphorically significant, because you have a town that's called Palestine. Okay, you can just substitute that and say Israel, a town called the land of Israel. And you have this crazy thing that happens that produces a scene that looks like this: a gigantic, freaky, almost like nuclear bomb looking pillar of smoke. Okay, this is frightening. And not frightening just because of how it looks, but because it's very deadly. It's a deadly thing. They're thinking that this is deadly because of the chemicals that were released as a result of this incident. We'll go into those details in just a minute. But first, so you see, you have this big pillar of smoke. I'm not saying that scripture has been fulfilled, but in the scriptures, when we're talking about the last days, you have the imagery of pillars of smoke, right? And you have this gigantic pillar of smoke in East Palestine. And when we think about East Palestine, what do we typically think about? Well, the way that the political boundaries work right now in Israel is that you have the state of Israel. Well, I don't want to get too political or whatever, but the world recognizes Israel as having these borders right here, and then the Palestinians having the Gaza Strip, as well as the West Bank. Now, this is currently all Israel, but there's some that want it to be a two-state solution where the Palestinians would have this area over here referred to as the West Bank, and then the Gaza Strip. And then also, I think the Golan Heights. I'm not too clear on that. I think these are the Golan Heights right here. I'm not sure about that part, but but anyway, East Palestine today would be essentially where the Palestinians live and what they want as a future state, right? With Jerusalem right here. Okay, this is like one of the big sticking points of coming to any sort of peace or solution is, well, the Palestinians and Israel want the Temple Mount, right? For obvious reasons. So anyway, going back to Ohio, is this some kind of sign of or foreshadowing of things to come? I don't know. I guess we'll see. That's how I feel about probably both this and this mountain that's been cleaved in twain in Turkey, that it's probably signs of things to come. Another interesting detail that I noticed here as I was looking at the map is you'll notice that there's a town up here called Unity, of all things. Unity. So I wouldn't say that there's really unity right now in Israel between Israelis and Palestinians. So I think that's a little bit interesting. And then when we zoom out, what do we have near here that would be significant to our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Zoom out, you have the Kirtland Temple that is relatively close. Let's take a look at the absolute measurements here. So from Kirtland to here, it's about 68 miles. So it's about an hour away if you're driving by freeway. If you zoom out even more, you'll see that they're both in the northeast corner of Ohio. You zoom out even more and you're looking at the United States, and they're very, very close together when you look at it from this point of view. So I don't know if that means anything. It may not. But that's something there for you to think about. Okay, so let's go ahead and read what it says in some of these stories here. I don't think there was anything else in this one. ABC News. Why the toxins from the Ohio train derailment could have posed deadly threats for residents nearby. No, I'm just going to be frank here. If I was living in that area, I would be livid right now. Here's a graph, a chart, I guess, of the affected area. Okay. Probably, it has something to do with particulates. Let's see. A map shows two areas that will be affected by a burn off of chemicals from a train derailment in East Ohio, or East Palestine, Ohio. Okay. Just look at that black smoke. Oh, that's just, okay. Long-term carcinogens like vinyl chloride or vinyl chloride can also cause cancer in organs like the liver. Kevin Chris, professor of chemical and biomolecular engineering and director of Ohio University's Air Quality Center, told ABC News, quote, "Breathe those under heavy concentrations and it's really bad for you. It's like an acid mist." Yeah, you probably don't want to be breathing in acid mists. That doesn't sound good. It's not something that you want to be around in high concentrations. And certainly you had a pretty high concentration right there. Oh my. Okay. However, there's also a risk of coming in contact with the toxins that get embedded in the soil. Health officials will then take soil samples and dig out any of the affected soil, a feat complicated by the fact that much of the toxins were spilled into a ditch, Christ said. Some of the toxins spilled into the Ohio River near the northern panhandle of West Virginia, prompting officials to shut down water production in the area and transfer to an alternate source of water supply, West Virginia Governor Jim Justice told reporters during a news conference on Wednesday. It seriously looks like a nuclear bomb went off almost. That is a very stunning visual right there. Here's the train all derailed. You have all the train cars, right? All right, let's go on to the next story. This is WKBN 27. This caught my eye because of the title. It says, "We basically nuked a town. 3 more chemicals discovered in Ohio train derailment." Okay, this is a quote from Sil Cagiano, a hazardous materials specialist. Quote, "We basically nuked a town with chemicals so we could get a railroad open." I haven't been able to really determine what he's referring to there. But I'll show you some in just a minute. I think what he may be talking about. Okay, later, this is another quote from him. He says, "I was surprised when they quickly told the people they can go back home, but then said if they feel like they want their homes tested, they can have them tested. I would have far rather that they did all the testing." Cagiano, I'm going to go with Cagiano. Cagiano says it's possible some of these chemicals could still be present in homes and on objects until you clean them thoroughly. Quote, "There's a lot of what ifs, and we're going to be looking at this thing 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line and wondering, gee, cancer clusters could pop up, well water could go bad," Cagiano said. Cagiano recommends everyone in the East Palestine area should get a health checkup, get it on record where your health stands now so you can move forward. So that moving forward, you'll have documented any effects possibly related to the train derailment. Life's not fair. It's not fair. That's the first thing that you have to understand. It is not fair. No one asked for this to happen. Everyone is probably just living their lives, being happy, looking forward to this this new year. But it's still really sad. And, pray for those people that they don't end up with cancer or other things. Okay. On the Wikipedia page for this incident, it says background. The derailed train was a Norfolk Southern freight train, which consisted of 3 locomotives, 9 empty cars, and 141 loaded cars. The train was operating from the Terminal Railroad Association of St. Louis Yard in Madison, Illinois, to Norfolk's Southern's Conway Yard in Conway, Pennsylvania. The train was not equipped with electronically controlled pneumatic brakes. So those are like air brakes, which a former Federal Railroad Administration official claimed would have mitigated the severity of the incident. Okay, so it wasn't the cause, but it would have helped. Okay, in 2017, Norfolk Southern successfully lobbied the Trump administration to repeal the regulations requiring the use of such brakes on trains carrying hazardous materials. I read another website. I was trying to dig into this more. There was this weird website called workers.org, and it was a very leftist, socialist, communist type of website, and they were like, well, it's because all these regulations were repealed, and so they're just trying to cut down on costs, and um, which just because they're socialists, I'm not going to say that they're wrong. I don't know. I'm not an expert in these things, but make up your own mind as to why this happened, or if the regulations would have mitigated the severity of the incident. I don't know, but that's what there is out there for you to read. That's what they're saying. So what some people are saying. um Oh yeah, and then lawsuits. On February 8th, 3 class action lawsuits were filed against Norfolk Southern Railway by several businesses and residents affected by the incident. One asks it to pay for medical screening and treatment for people living within a 30-mile radius of the derailment to determine if the spilled substances have health effects. 30 miles. Well, so we saw that between there and the Kirtland Temple, that's like 60 miles. So that's a pretty large area. And I wonder if there's credibility that it could have affected that wide of an area. Let's do this again. Let's just do, oh no, not that. Pull out the ruler. So 30 miles is like that. Yeah, it's a pretty wide area. You'd include a bunch of other towns like Cranberry Township, Newcastle in Pennsylvania, Youngstown, not quite Warren, not quite Alliance. Anyway, that really, really, really sucks. So if you think that somehow the location of this incident is significant, whether it be because it's in the town of East Palestine and because that's close to Unity, and because these are both close to Kirtland Temple, let me know. Let me know if you think there's anything, even if you can't explain it. That's fine if you can't explain it. It's a weird clustering of things at the very least. All right, let's look at this now. So we're in Turkey, okay? And here you have an olive grove that's been dramatically split into two. There's now a valley in between the two parts of the olive grove. You see olive trees over here. See olive trees over here. It looks like a pretty hilly region. Like I noted earlier in the video, you can see hills back here. And I mean, I don't know from this angle, but this does appear to be on a hill because behind it, you can see that there's kind of like some valleys back here, some ridges, whatever. So let's think about this in terms of it being a foreshadowing of the Mount of Olives, right? We all know what's going to happen with the Mount of Olives, but don't worry, we're going to read the scriptures and we'll all get on the same page. The Mount of Olives is significant when it comes to the events of the second coming, specifically when Christ comes to the Jews in Jerusalem. Okay, so on the Wikipedia page, it says that the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem is named for the olive groves that once covered its slopes. Okay, obviously. In Zechariah chapter 14, which is the last chapter of the book of Zechariah, starting in, let's read the chapter heading first. At his second coming, the Lord will fight for Israel. His feet will stand upon the Mount of Olives. He will be king over all the earth. Plagues will destroy the wicked. Verse 4. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives, which cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west. And there shall be a very great valley. And half of the mountain shall remove northward, and half of it southward. Okay, so what does that look like? Let's go there right now on Google Earth. Let's take a look. Okay, so here is the Temple Mount, right? Is there going to be a third temple that the Jews build here on the Temple Mount? I don't know. Don't know what it's going to look like at the time that Christ comes. Some feel very, very strongly about it. I do not. I could see it being this. I could also see it being the BYU Jerusalem Center. I could see both of them being built and being temples. I don't know. Here's the Mount of Olives right here, right? And so we're facing east. Okay, right now we're looking east. And so the scripture says that it's going to separate into two parts. The north part is going to go north, and then the south part is going to go south, like that. Okay. Verse 5. And ye shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal. Okay, so that's kind of weird. That's a detail that I had never noticed before, that the valley is going to go to Azal. I looked into that, and there's not really a clear location. Let me just read what it says on the Wikipedia. No written work prior to the late 19th century definitively identifies what or where Azal is or was. Most Bible commentators of the late 19th century considered it to be a place near Jerusalem. Cyril of Alexandria wrote in his commentary on the book of Zechariah chapter 14 that Azal was known to be, quote, a town situated at the far point of the mountain, end quote. So going back to Google Earth, obviously it's not the same today, but if we look, okay, wait. Yeah, there we go. If we look that way, you know, the mountain kind of like slopes down over here. Could it be talking about over here? I don't know. Could it be talking about down here? I don't know. And they don't know either. Nobody knows. But I guess if that's the case, if that's where Azal is, then that's going to be quite the split. Like this entire thing is going to go this way. And, well, why don't we just measure it? So let's say that like maybe roughly from here to over here, that would be about 3/4 of a mile. Or if we're looking at meters, that'd be about 1,188 meters. All right. So there's that possibility. Let's read on. In 1850, geographer Rabbi Joseph Schwartz claimed that Azal was modern Azaria, situated 1 kilometer southeast of the southernmost peak of the Mount of Olives, then called Mount Corruption. Okay, and then it goes on. I don't care that much, but I did want to see if anybody had any definitive idea where that was. So, ye shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal, wherever that is. Yea, ye shall flee, like as ye fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. And the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with thee. Now, see, this is interesting right here, because this seems to indicate, again, this seems to indicate that the righteous of the church, and I would assume the resurrected, those that are part of the first resurrection, would come to the Jews. So in other words, they would descend with Christ to the Jews, and then I think later, again, to the rest of the world. I don't know, but it says here that the Lord my God shall come and all the saints with thee. It does have a footnote. Yeah, and it takes you to 1 Thessalonians. If we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, them also which sleep in Christ will God bring with him. And I think this is the same chapter that talks about those that are living also. Maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking of 2 Thessalonians. I'm not sure. Oh, no, it's right here. Yeah, see? So it has that, and then you go down a couple verses. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, in the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. So it seems that the righteous will come with Christ to the Jews and then later to the world, I think. All right. Okay. And it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to the Lord, not day nor night. But it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light. And it shall be in that day that living waters shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea. In summer and in winter shall it be. And we've covered this, that there's a lot of water activity happening right now when it comes to the Dead Sea. Go just check my channel, go back, search for Dead Sea. I did an interview with Samantha Siegel, who had noticed that there's fish starting to show up really close to the Dead Sea. And I covered a number of different articles where there was like a unknown river, like an underground river going to the Dead Sea. They've observed craters at the bottom of the Dead Sea that are filling up from underneath with fresh water, and there's microbial life there. There's also wildflowers that are starting to show up on the North Shore, which hasn't happened in like forever. So that area in this prophecy, I think that's beginning right now as we speak. So this idea of the Mount of Olives splitting in two, it's repeated again in Doctrine and Covenants. I thought it'd be worth reading that. D&C 45 verses 47 to 43. Then shall the arm of the Lord fall upon the nations, and then shall the Lord set his foot upon his mount, and it shall cleave in twain, and the earth shall tremble and reel to and fro, and the heavens also shall shake. And the Lord shall utter his voice, and all the ends of the earth shall hear it, and the nations of the earth shall mourn, and they that have laughed shall see their folly. And calamity shall cover the mocker, and the scorner shall be consumed, and they that have watched for iniquity shall be hewn down and cast into fire. And then shall the Jews look upon me and say, what are these wounds in thine hands and in thine feet? Then shall they know that I am the Lord, for I shall say unto them, these wounds are the wounds with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. I am he who was lifted up. I am Jesus that was crucified. I am the Son of God. And then shall they weep because of their iniquities. Then shall they lament because they persecuted their king. All right. Okay. And then one other thing. I wanted to know, I wanted to compare these two events, the Mount of Olives, whenever that ends up happening, with what just happened in Turkey. Okay. So the Mount of Olives, okay, it says here, this is in encyclopedia.com. It says, however, since the Mount of Olives stands so very high in relation to the deep Kidron brook beneath it, it seems much higher than it actually is. So whenever you look for the height of the Mount of Olives, usually what you get is the elevation compared to sea level, right? Elevation. But what I wanted to know was how high from like the base of the mountain to the top. And so it appears this is the answer. It's 351 feet tall, which is 108 meters. Okay, 351 feet. So this thing that happened in Turkey, how big was this divide? How deep? It says here, a verdant olive grove was cleaved into two during last week's devastating earthquake in Turkey, creating a valley 984 feet long, which is about 300 meters, and then 130 feet deep, or 40 meters. Okay, you got that? So 130 feet, 40 meters, compared to the Mount of Olives, which is 351 feet, and then 108 meters. So less than half the height of the Mount of Olives. Now, we don't really have details, really, I don't think, about how deep the valley is going to be. It does say it's going to be a very great valley, and if the valley extends all the way to Azal, and if Azal is like all the way over here, it's like a kilometer away or something like that, then that's going to be pretty dramatic. But if it's not, then as we look at the Mount of Olives here from this point of view, you know, if it went down about halfway, or, you know, around here maybe, I think that would still be pretty close to what we're seeing. I mean, that would be pretty close to what we're seeing right now in Turkey, right? And maybe it will be a lot worse. I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter when we compare the Turkey event to this, but that's just to give you an idea. It's probably going to be more dramatic and probably a lot bigger than what happened in Turkey when this happens with the Mount of Olives. So, all right, so let's go back here. Its creation is another show of devastating power. Now, that phrase right there caught my attention, because remember what President Nelson said just a couple months ago in his main talk of October General Conference 2022. He said, "But my dear brothers and sisters, so many wonderful things are ahead. In coming days, we will see the greatest manifestations of the Savior's power that the world has ever seen. Between now and the time he returns with power and great glory, he will bestow countless privileges, blessings, and miracles upon the faithful." Now, I'm not saying that this is necessarily fulfillment of what President Nelson said, but this is a pretty incredible show of power nonetheless. And it does seem to be, to me anyway, a pretty obvious foreshadowing of what's just on the horizon here, what's soon to come at the Mount of Olives. This is like not a test run, but just a foreshadowing, essentially. I think that's what's going on here. Irfan Aksu, who lives in the neighborhood, told Turkish news agency Demiyor'un news agency that when the earthquake started last Monday, it created a quote-unquote incredible sound where he lived. Quote, "It was like a battlefield when we woke up," he said. Last Monday's earthquake was the strongest to hit anywhere in the world since an 8.1 magnitude earthquake struck a region near the South Sandwich Islands in the southern Atlantic Ocean in 2021, though the remote location of that incident resulted in little damage. A number of factors have contributed to making this earthquake so lethal. One of them is the time of day it occurred. With the quake hitting early in the morning, many people were in their beds when it happened and are now trapped under the rubble of their homes. I feel like even this is maybe symbolic, metaphorical, and, as far as like foreshadowing the future. Now, this literally happened, and it's a tragedy, and let's pray for those people. But if there's a lesson to be learned here, okay, as we're thinking about the second coming, we don't want to be asleep. Okay, we don't want to be asleep when it happens. And I think that a lot of us, a lot of you that are watching this channel along with me, we're okay. We're not asleep. We have eyes to see, ears to hear. We know that the time is coming really close. Whereas there are many people that are asleep, and they're going to find themselves in a similar situation. It's going to be really bad, especially if you're part of the crowd that's not going to be moving into the millennium, if you're living a telestial lifestyle. And if you're not, if you do move into the millennium, but you're asleep, it's probably going to hit you really hard. Your world is going to be possibly shattered There's going to be a paradigm shift in everything, in all aspects of your life, right? So there's a lot going on here with what happened in Turkey, and specifically with this literal Mount of Olives in Turkey that split in two. I don't think that this was coincidence. I know probably some of you do. You think it's just looking too far into it. Whatever. That's fine. Believe how you want. Just a couple more things here. This is Insider. The Turkey earthquake sliced open an olive grove, creating a chasm right in the middle of it that's deep enough to house a 13-floor building. Yeah. A chasm that is 984 feet long, 160 feet wide, and 130 feet deep now cuts across the grove. The Turkey-Syria earthquake ripped apart an olive grove in the country's southern Hatay province, leaving a deep 984-foot long chasm in the land. The jagged rift, which split the olive grove in two, measures 165 feet across and is around 130 feet deep, per the Daily Sabah, a Turkish newspaper. That's approximately the width of a football field and the height of a 13-story building. Yeah, that is rather dramatic. I found the location here on Google Earth. So let's take a look where that was. Okay. It's basically, I don't have the exact location, but this is the town right here of Tepehan or Tepehan. I don't know. Let's zoom out. And kind of to my surprise, here's usually when you think of Turkey, or at least when I think of Turkey, I'm usually thinking about the peninsula part over here, typically. But this is like in one of the southernmost points of Turkey, down in this little piece of land right here that hangs down, which means that compared to the rest of the country, it's among the closest locations to Israel. Israel's just right here. It's very close. That also, I think, is eye-opening and something to be aware of. It could be a sign that it's getting close. The final event, or the event that the Jews will experience, is getting really close. I think that's pretty stunning. So the crack in the earth appears to be filled with large boulders and rock rubble. The chasm is close to the Tepehan Village in the, Altinozu district of Hatay, which has a population of around 7,000 people, which that's an interesting number, 7,000. Specifically 7,000, because when you think about 7,000, for me anyway, I think about the 7,000 years of this Earth's temporal existence and how we're about to enter into that 7,000 years. We've already gone through 6. We're at the end of 6, and now we're moving into the last 1,000. So even the population number of this village, I think, is significant. The 7.8 magnitude Turkey-Syria earthquake, which occurred on February 6th at 4:17 a.m. local time, left a trail of destruction in its wake. So even the time is interesting because 17 has come up lots of times on the channel. President Nelson is the 17th president, prophet of this dispensation. And there's a lot of other things, but you'll just have to go back and watch my old videos. There's a video here on YouTube, aerial views of it. So if you want to check that out, I'll put the link in the description below. But it is pretty crazy looking, as you can see. Okay, we already covered that. I found this. This is from Al Arabiya News. And this says, United Nations Relief Chief Martin Griffiths said on Sunday that he believes the death toll will double or more to top 50,000. So as of right now, I'm going with this number, 41,132. So I guess somebody's expecting at least like 9,000 more to be added to this. So I'll stay on top of that and see if that turns out to be the case. So, yeah, you can look at this however you want to. I'm going to put it down on my tracker. I think it's significant, especially this one right here, this olive grove being split in two, just because of how well that depicts what's going to happen when Christ comes to the Jews. This is like a perfect depiction of that. It's even close to where it's going to happen, right? Some people think that it's silly. I don't. I know a lot of you don't. There's things like this that happen that I think that we should really pay attention to. You'll remember that back in 2021, you had this that happened where this guy right here, so he's on Jimmy Kimmel right here being interviewed, he was swallowed by a whale. He was literally all the way inside of a whale. Okay. He was like scuba diving, got swallowed by a whale. He thought he was going to die, but he ended up surviving and able to tell the story. So, this obviously makes you think of the prophet Jonah, right? And it's like, oh, well, I mean, what does this have to do with anything? Well, I don't know. Maybe nothing. But another thing that happened in that same year is you had the Surfside condo building that collapsed. You remember that? Which was a very bizarre thing to happen. But this happened, and I need to put this on my timeline, but this happened around the same time that this happened. So you have a Jonah-like story or figure here, right? And then the first survivor, there was only a few survivors from that collapse, but the first survivor that was pulled out of the rubble, guess what his name was? This is him right here. And by the way, he's Jewish. This is a Jewish boy. His name is Jonah Handler. So, I'm not going to interpret what this means, but the fact that you have a Jonah-like occurrence right here with this guy that was literally swallowed by a whale, and then you have this collapse where Jonah was inside of this rubble and wreckage, and then he was pulled out, and his name is Jonah, and he's Jewish. I'm probably not going to pass that off as just coincidence. How do we look at the story of Jonah in the church, and not just us, but Christians too? We look at it as a foreshadowing of the resurrection of Christ. In the New Testament, Christ said to the Pharisees, and I think it was the Pharisees, I'm not going to give you any sign, because they were basically challenging him. And he's like, I'm not going to be giving you any signs except for the sign of Jonah. And that occurred when he was crucified, and and then 3 days later he was resurrected. And in between that time, he was in the spirit world. Jonah was essentially a symbol. It was a foreshadowing and a symbol of Christ going to the spirit world, to the captives, and then being resurrected, right? I remember on my mission, I was in Valencia, Spain, which is actually just right on the other side of the Mediterranean. And over here they have this cathedral. I can't remember what it's called, but in the Catholic Church, they believe that the Holy Grail is in this cathedral. So you can go there and you can visit it and stuff. And some of the artwork that they have in there is of Jonah, and they show I can't remember exactly how it's laid out, but it seems like they have a few different scenes depicting the story of Jonah, and then they have the interpretation of that story by having Christ in his resurrection, either above it or beneath it, but in parallel to the story of Jonah. So, that's why I think we need to watch these things, even if we don't fully understand what's being said. You at least get the sense that God is doing something, and he's trying to let us know that things are coming, right? I mean, maybe in this case right here, maybe this is meant to point our minds to resurrection, the fact that the second coming is happening, and we're going to be seeing the morning of the first resurrection, right? When we look at this, I mean, this one's pretty clear that, hey, maybe this is just right around the corner, you know, when this happens in Jerusalem in the Mount of Olives. Maybe this is a foreshadowing, being in East Palestine, maybe war's coming. Maybe there's going to be big pillars of smoke from the final war and the siege of Jerusalem, you know, in East Palestine. Don't know. All right, but that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.